You may be a doctor, but I'm the doctor. The difficult article, you might say. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the one, the only, The Robot by Terrance Dicks and directed by Christopher Barry. The Robot. This is the Doctor Who story. You've got to have watched this at least one point. It has the introduction to the biggest, probably the best Doctor of all time, Tom bloody Baker. Oh man, this 4-part adventure is just... I'm so happy I got to talk about this today. Let's back away a bit. Sorry, I'm so excited. This story has a lot of thirsts for the series. For one, it stars the 4th Doctor. Go watch it. Sorry. I've threatened someone to watch it. You, in your house, stop watching this video and go watch The Robot. It's good. You're going to enjoy yourselves. So, not only does it introduce the 4th Doctor, but it also introduces a new companion, Harry Sullivan, a medical doctor who works at UNIT, and he's a bit old-fashioned, and he's a bit, Sarah Jane calls him a retro James Bond kind of guy. So, yeah, but, you know, it has a lot of introductions and stuff, but it also sees the last story to be produced by Barry Letts. The next story would be produced by the legendary Philip Hinchcliffe. So this story, and also as well, this story is the last to have the Brigadier and Unit be a regular part of the series, as they won't return again until Terror of the Zygons. So, yeah, a lot of first and a lot of last. So this is a really groundbreaking story just on its technical terms. But is it any good? Let's get right in. One thing you've got to love about this story: Terrance Dicks writing for the 4th Doctor and Tom Baker himself. I'm sorry, I know I keep praising it, but there's just so many quotes, like the one I said at the start. You've also got can't, there's no such word as can't. It's a free cosmos. Never care for the word impregnable. It sounds a bit too much like unsinkable. What's wrong with unsinkable? Nothing, said the iceberg to the Titanic. Glup, glup, glup. Would you like a jelly, baby? I think the nose is a difficult improvement. As for the ears, well, I'm not quite sure. Tell me, what do you think about the ears? So yeah, Tom Baker. It's probably we take it for granted how well this story sets up Tom Baker's portrayal. Most Doctor Who doctors have like a growing period where they're trying to get into what we would now know them. Like their first story is usually them basically testing the waters, or they hardly appear in it that much to let the audience grow. But here they just chuck Tom into scenes, and his weird, eccentric behaviour, which isn't really acted. Tom Baker is really that weird. If you just look at any interview with him, he's just a strange man. And the older he gets, the weirder he gets. Like everything he says, you don't know if he's lying or not. And even when he's like being like hugely positive towards you, you can tell like there's something. Like he's like the king of insults. But yeah. So the Doctor's basically growing to being the Doctor, and he gets introduced to Harry Sullivan, and there's a great scene in which he's using his skipping rope and showing Harry Sullivan that he's fit. But whilst this is going on, someone has been stealing machine parts to make a new laser gun, a disintegration gun, which unit have been building because it's to defend the British nation. And whilst this is going on, Sarah Jane wants to meet a think tank because she's still a journalist after all. And when she goes there, something really secret stuff is happening, and so she contacts Professor Kettlewell, someone who used to work there, and I love this character. He's a very eccentric character, match and rival with basically Tom Bacon, just how weird he is. Though I don't know if that's probably acting. He's probably putting up as an act, but and so Sarah Jane goes back in there, and she gets introduced to the robot K1, which is such a cool design. It might be a bit thick, it might be a bit on the bulky side, but man, look at that. That came from 1975. Yeah, 1975. How is that not the coolest thing ever? Sorry, I'm just remembering every Tom Baker moment in this story. Yeah, the story isn't the most well thought out. I mean, it takes a huge coincidence that when Brigadier is trying to work out who this, taking all these equipment to make a new disintegrator gun, just so happened at the same time that Sarah Jane goes working into this think tank, into journalism and all that. So, yeah, there's a lot of big coincidences here. And it's not Terence Dicks's greatest script in terms of plot, but there is so much fun in this story, like how the think tank explained to Sarah Jane that they knew that what her plan was, is that she was going to try and get back to try and see what they were doing. So they had a little demonstration of the robot, and Sarah basically explains, could this be used for evil? Couldn't they be used to attack someone? And the leader is like, like this? And the assistant closes the door, and she's like, this woman is an enemy of the human race. Kill her. And the robot coming up to try and kill her, but he's programmed not to hurt humanity, so he's really conflicted, and he's like in and out and stuff. Really fun story. And I also like the doctor then goes to Sarah Jane goes then to the doctor, and we get some brilliant moments in which the doctor is talking about basically he's leading up to the fact that it's probably a robot. He says something like, and then Sarah Jane walks in like a big, huge, giant robot. Of course, how do you know I was going to say that? And Sarah Jane's like, knew it. I've bloody seen it. I talked to it and everything. So the doctor, with big grins and an enthusiasm, runs basically head first to Think Tank, who explain that they dismantled the robot. But later on, the doctor gets a call from Professor Kettlewell, who says that the robot has turned up to his house. Come by. And so the doctor goes to his workshop alone and finds no one there except for the robot, leading into the second cliffhanger, which is just a fantastic. I really like the Tom Baker's really active in the story. He's jumping around on everything. There's bits where he's just coming out of the unit car and he literally jumps over the bloody door. So yeah, it's important to note as well, Tom Baker is, at this point in the series, the youngest Doctor at the age of 40. So he is obviously at this point the most active Doctor, and Terence Dicks and Barry Letts used this opportunity to get some really etogenic Doctor moments, like when he's fighting the robot. You can tell that there were no stunt doubles. Tom Baker is really running around and getting pushed at and stuff. And I like how charming he is whilst the robot's trying to kill him. It basically sets up his entire Doctor, basically. He's the one where you don't know how he reacts. Sometimes in a very threatening situation, he's very calm and polite about it. And then sometimes when his villains are being all calm and polite, it's when he gets really aggressive and very agitated, which it really emphasizes in this story as well, as Sarah Jane goes with Kettlewell to this think tank, the Scientific Reform Society, which turns out to be led by the woman of the think tank. And Kettlewell explains that he used to have a membership there, but he doesn't anymore because he didn't like their ideas. However, he still has a pass, and so he's going to try and sneak Sarah Jane in. And the Doctor hears this after it's happened, and the Brigadier tells him. And the Doctor's reaction is, "Kettlewell? You let Sarah go with Kettlewell?" Very aggressive, which actually fits because it turns out, plot twist, Kettlewell was actually part of the Scientific Reform Society, the villains of this story. They are clearly like a modern day Nazi group. They even wear like armbands, and they have like a symbol, only instead of red and white and black, it's green and yellow, the distinctive Marvel villain colours. And their idea, they get a few scenes in which they explain their ideas, their philosophy, in which they basically believe that people who are more scientific and logical should rule the world, and they should be able to tell, and anyone who is not scientific or smart in their eyes basically should have no free will and let the scientists govern their lives. An example is having one of the guys tell Sarah Jane that if he was the ruler, Sarah Jane wouldn't be able to wear jeans, which back in the 70s, women wearing jeans was this whole feminist symbol, because women weren't wearing jeans back then, they were wearing skirts. So when jeans was a symbol of power for females. So they're basically a group of people who want to tell people how to think and how to talk. So they are the villains, and they explain that they're not really bad guys or good guys. They're just logical, and they basically think that anybody who isn't logical should be logical. Just everything logical. They basically think like computers. So yeah, the story surprisingly has a lot of modern day meaning behind it. I mean, the world. So it's cool and nice to see that this story really holds up well in terms of its ideology, its themes, and how creativity cannot be suppressed. Especially how the robot was programmed to never harm humanity, and it when it is commanded to conflict with its ideology, it plays up, it's confused, and it struggles with itself. A great example is actually when, in the scene in which Sarah Jane sees him for the first time, when it doesn't actually kill her, the leader of the Scientific Reform society explains to her that it was just a demonstration how to show it won't kill a human. And Sarah, surprisingly, says it's incredibly cruel, and she asks the robot, how does it feel? Is it okay? She's seen that he was distressed. She was showing compassion and kindness to the robot. So, yeah, this also sums up this is also probably a great time to mention one of the big themes of the Fourth Doctor era. The Fourth Doctor era, in which most of the Fourth Doctor stories are adaptations of other stories. Specifically, this one is King Kong, as the robot is an allegory of King Kong, in which everybody's using it for their own goals and stuff. But you can't really control him. But there's one female character who's basically the love interest, who shows the creature kindness and compassion, and sees the monster is a bit more sensitive than what people give it credit for. And so, yeah, it turns out that Kettlewell is a villain, and the robot is working for the Scientific Reform Society, say that 10 times fast, and basically they capture Sarah Jane. And so the Doctor goes to the Scientific Reform Society meeting, and it's one of the strangest, bizarre scenes. Not maybe when you're watching it, but when you really think about it. These guys are the logical, basically Nazi group, and they're cheering, and when somebody's talking about they're going to conquer the world, they shove the robot, and they're like, oh my god, it's really powerful and stuff. Then the Doctor just somehow gets on the stage, does a comedy act with a bunch of cards, literally explains to them that he is distracting them until the Brigadier arrives, and they all laugh. They all play along with it as if they are actually seeing a comedy act. And if this was any other Doctor, if this was any other actor, you couldn't get away with that. However, Tom Baker's charm, Tom Baker's charisma, his bombastic nature, just, you buy it. You buy it. It's a great point in which Terrance Dicks maybe have failed in the writing department, but Tom Baker saves it. And there's a really silly moment in which he drops his card, he goes down, and somebody tries to tackle him and flies over him. It's pretty hilarious. But then the Doctor gets captured, only to be saved when units, guards, come over to try and siege the place. But they get away because they captured Sarah Jane and held her as prisoner. And so they track him down to a bunkhouse which has nuclear weapons. There's a nuclear bunker, and a nuclear bunker that has the codes to basically set off a nuclear holocaust, as the Doctor describes it. And so the Doctor and the Brigadier try to get into this base, but it is protected by the robot, who now has the disintegrator gun working. And it's kind of funny because you do kind of think, whilst watching this, is how can this one laser be so bad? I mean, it's still just one gun. But according to the Doctor, which is probably one of the weaker moments of the story, in which the Doctor basically explains about this gun, but really we don't really see much into it, that the gun's power is almost unlimited, and its range is so long that if he shot it up in the sky, he could make a hole in the moon. But you don't ever see anything that too powerful with the gun. He shoots down a tank, and the effect for the tank is pretty hilarious because it's so clearly a toy in the foreground and the robot's in the background. But it is kind of cool to see unit using much more military vehicles like a tank. And the robot basically warns to thing, otherwise it'll kill him. Now, it's probably a great moment to mention the robot's voice is just so cool. I can't remember who voices him. It doesn't say on the back, but it is a really powerful voice. It's one of those villain voices that really gets stuck in your head. But anyway, so the Doctor, Kettlewell's in this base, and he basically having second thoughts. He thought that if UNIT don't apply to their demands, that they will give up. They won't actually set up the nukes, it's a bluff. But the leader lady, she is like, no, we are going to set off a few nukes. So he has second thoughts, and he goes up to try and talk to the monster. He frees Sarah Jane and goes to talk to the monster, to the robot, sorry. And the Doctor sneaks in by, but before this happens, the robot tries to shoot. I can't remember if he tries to shoot the Doctor or Sarah Jane. But either way, Kettlewell gets involved and he accidentally kills Kettlewell, and the robot is in distress and collapses. So the robot collapses and they go into the base and basically held. They stop the codes with 2 seconds to spare, and you think the day is all saved and stuff. However, Sarah Jane goes missing, and so does the robot. And the robot, basically after killing its father, describes that he's going to try and complete his father's mission on setting off the codes, not realising it, he had second thoughts. And because Sarah Jane was so kind and compassionate to him, he would let Sarah Jane live. And when they discover this, the UNIT are still trying to work out, are trying to set the thing, and the robot's setting out the missile codes again. However, the Doctor tells the Brigadier to let the world leaders know to try and stop the codes, to which they do, which brings back a huge plot hole in the story, in which if they could have stopped the codes right from the beginning, why did the UNIT even need to go into the bunker to try and stop them? I mean, literally the Doctor had 2 minutes to spare. Why didn't they just use this automatic failsafe to begin with? So yeah, that's a bit of a plot hole. The story has a lot of plot holes in it, thinking about it, but the story isn't really focused on its plot. It's mainly on being a fun action-adventure piece. As the robot tries to go up and try and kill as many humans as possible. But the Brigadier has a great idea. He uses the laser gun on the robot. However, something goes wrong and it turns it into a giant robot with some really hilariously bad green screen effects. On which he picks up Sarah Jane, hammering back to King Kong, and takes her away whilst killing other UNIT members and squashing them. The Doctor basically discovers that Kettlewell made this robot out of his own metal called living metal, in which it has the properties of organic life in which it can grow. However, he also made a sort of metal virus, you may say, in which it basically turns any metal into rust. So the Doctor goes to Kettlewell's laboratory and tries to mix up this, taking Bessie with him. So it's really cool. The Fourth Doctor's first adventure sees him in Bessie, which would be the last time Bessie appears until the 5 Doctors, and it would be the last time it was seen with its modern Doctor until Battlefield. So that's very interesting. The robot is basically going around killing everyone, and the Doctor splashes it with this rust thing. He's placed Sarah Jane on top of a building, and so the robot dies, and everyone's sort of celebrating, but Sarah Jane is kind of sad, and the Doctor offers her a jelly baby, having the first time the Fourth Doctor says, his iconic catchphrase, "Would you like a jelly, baby?" And yeah, so, and the Doctor basically explains that he had no choice. He would have loved to see the robot live, but however, he had no choice. It had great capacity for evil, so he had to kill it. And Sarah Jane, the Doctor basically sums up being childish, and we get the iconic, "You can't be grown up if you can't be childish sometimes," which is probably one of my favourite Doctor Who quotes. I say it all the time with me and my mates. And they're about to leave. However, Harry Sullivan appears. I haven't talked about Harry Sullivan much in this story. He doesn't have anything much to do in terms of plot. He gets a little mission in which he becomes a sort of a spy, as he pretends to be a medical officer into the Science Reform Society's base. But the next time you see him, he's already caught and he's captured and stuff. So he doesn't get much to do. But for some reason, Ian Martin, fantastic actor, really shines out. He's so charming. He's so normal. He reminds me of a 1970s version of Martin Freeman. Just a charming young lad. And he basically steps inside the TARDIS to try and prove the Doctor wrong, that he's mad about how a police telephone box can travel. And so he becomes a companion. And that's Robot. Overall, it has a lot of plot holes, a lot of coincidences, and in terms of just pure script, it might be Terrance Dick's weakest story. However, I don't think the goal here was to make it a deep, compelling plot. The goal was to introduce the maddest person you have ever met and just have a fun experience with it. Not to say that the story doesn't have anything to say. I mean, the Scientific Reform Society is the villains, and the King Kong inspired robot has plenty to say, but the main focus is on it being fun, and you've got to watch the story at least once. You may not like it, but you gotta love Tom Baker in it. So that's the Robot. Absolutely love it. So join me next time for the first outer space adventure with Harry Sullivan and the Fourth Doctor. We see giant bug peoples, and Harry Sullivan is an idiot. So join me next time for the Ark in Space. See you then on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.